What a ride from the young Belgian. Enric Mas, Mikel Landa, Vlasov, Kras and Soler. And I want to question what you just said there, Sean, that we all expected the Jumbo-Visma trio to be right up there today. But did we? Because there was a lot of, as it now turns out to be, preemptive chat about Vingegaard and how he wasn't bringing that Tour de France form in and he was maybe going to switch into this role of super domestique. For him to put in that performance today, I think of the three, he's probably the one we least expected, almost.
Well, I think when we said, we talked about Jumbo-Visma, the three-prong going into the final climb, I mean, one was going to have to sacrifice the right for, to close down on the other guys who were going to attack and have to do the work. But it wasn't a situation at all. We did see a few attacks from some of the riders, but it was just, killed off very quickly by Jumbo-Visma, and they were the ones who started attacking then. So, there was no chance at all for the other riders to have, any possibility of doing something in the final. And, top three on the podium and top three in the GC.
And it's not just those three, is it? You've got to take your hat off to the riders that helped them get to that point, without whom they might have had to sacrifice one of their leaders to help the others. Because we had Kelderman, and before that we had Robert Hessink, and they took them, I wouldn't say really deep into the final climb, but deep enough that Jonas Vingegaard felt that he could go on the attack and potentially take it all the way to the finish line. But just looking at the results there, I mean, I'm clutching at straws here when it comes to positives for neutrals and positives for the rivals that aren't in the Jumbo-Visma team. Vingegaard had over a minute's lead at one point, and then we saw Sepp Kuss come round the corner to the finish like, wow, how quick has he gone? But actually, when you look at the time gaps back to Roglic and then back to Mas, Ayuso and the others behind, they all had started to close by the top of the climb there. So maybe, Vingegaard, I wouldn't say he was winging it, of course, he's just won pretty much the queen stage of the race. But he did fade a little bit compared to the others on the way up. Well, the final 2 kilometres of that climb, he lost over 20 seconds of his advantage. So, as I said, if you're trying to find some sort of positive that they might not be able to keep this going all the way through, at least Vingegaard, I think that's it. See, that's interesting, actually. We're going to have a little look at the attack that sealed the deal for Jonas Vingegaard. But as we were watching him there warming down in his bike next to Sepp Kuss, he looked the most broken of all of them. And we noted whenever Primoz crossed the line as well, Sepp and Primoz were beaming. And Jonas looked like he was almost ill. So I think this did take an awful lot out of him. Yeah, like death warmed up, I think what you're saying. He didn't look too great, sort of hunched over his bike and not immediately jumping on it to do his cool down. But yeah, we saw the attacks there. Initially, Ayuso followed him from UAE, but on the second one, I don't know whether Ayuso felt like he'd already gone over his limit a little bit on the first attack, or whether he thought, it's not my responsibility to do every bit of chasing when a guy from Jumbo-Visma goes up the road. But strong finish, The other thing is, we've got Mas, who's very experienced, who's always there or thereabouts, but at the same time never threatens to really win the race. But the other two riders who were up there today, Ayuso is 20, maybe turning 21, I think, at the end of this race. Kjell Uijtdebroek is only 20 as well. So it's a year or two early, probably, for those two. But it's really promising for both of them as well, not just for the future, but for the rest of this race. Let's not forget as well, Kjell Uijtdebroek is riding with a pot of Vaseline in his back pocket, Sean, because he's suffering with saddle sore, something that you know very well. I mean, that's not easy, is it? Certainly not. And in a stage race, there's no time to get any bit of recovery every day in the saddle there for 3 or 4 hours. So, yeah, a great performance by the young Belgian. But looking at Vingegaard, I think the attack at 4 kilometres to go, maybe that was a tactic just to try and pull out the other riders and see what Roglic could do. And maybe he found himself out in front and then he had just to continue on. Of course, the team direction, OK, the other guys are struggling. They're, not able to attack to try and come across to you. And Vingegaard found himself in a situation that he was out for too long, and that's the reason, he paid in the end. But what a performance. He might have been surprised, mightn't he? Oh, right, so now I've got to ride flat out to the finish. I thought somebody at least was going to... I was the decoy, so a counter-attack could happen.